Hello everyone, this is Mrs. Sherrill, your art teacher. For your art project today, Ms. Lovin has asked me to help you draw some night scene pictures. Apparently you are drawing something that is at nighttime, and all of the pictures that I'm going to give as an example are outdoors, and apparently you've been talking about what you see, smell, feel, taste, and hear in your environment or around you when you can't see very clearly. So I'm going to look first at this photograph. This is not a painting, this is an actual photograph that someone has taken outside. And what I want you to notice about this picture is that there is a light source. And like with our fruit, when we did our fruit, we talked about how you can tell where a light source is. This light source is probably where the sun has gone down over the hills, and you can still see the light. We don't see the sun, but we can still see the light from it. And whenever you hold an object in front of a light, you don't actually see its details. You see its shadow or its outline, or what we call its silhouette. So a silhouette is when you see the outline of something and you don't see the details, and you see mostly black or very, very dark colors. So this one is of a tree, and we see the hills. This is a photograph, and we can tell this one's in water. The sun hasn't completely gone down yet, and we can still see a little bit of the water in the foreground. But when the sun goes completely down, it's going to be a little bit darker, and the water probably won't show up as well. But I want you to see how it's kind of pink at the bottom. That's because the sun is still shining, and you know the sun is actually yellow, or it's on fire, and it gives off a yellow, red, orange, pink color whenever it's setting or rising in the morning. Now this is not a photograph, this is a painting. And in this painting, we see a coyote, we see the moon, we see clusters of stars, and we see some tree limbs, and we see the ground that is sloping. But you notice we can't see the details of the coyote or the trees. We only see the silhouette or the outline of them. And you have to imagine yourself in this position, in this place where this picture has been painted. Don't imagine that you're just looking at a picture. Imagine you're actually standing there, and think about what you might hear. I think you would probably hear the sound of the coyote howling, because he's obviously got his head backed up, looking into the sky as if he is howling. So that's what we would hear. Imagine that what we smell might be some fruit that has fallen off of this tree and fallen on the ground. This looks a lot like a persimmon tree that I have in my yard, and I don't know if you've ever seen persimmons. I don't eat them, nor do I use them to cook. They're just a nuisance for me because they over-ripen and fall on the ground, and they smell. So that's what I'm going to say I imagine that I would be smelling, is the persimmons that just fell off that tree that are laying on the ground, and they begin to be smelly. What I might imagine that I'm feeling here is the chilly air. It's like fall. It's summer has left, and fall is approaching, and the air has gotten a little bit chilly at night. What you might be tasting, sometimes something smells so strong in the air that you imagine you can taste it. And I actually wonder if maybe that there is some breeze that floats off of the fruit and actually hits you in the face, and maybe the taste actually goes into your mouth. I don't know whether that actually happens, because I'm not very scientific, but I imagine that could happen. I know sometimes I actually feel like I can taste things that I smell. So that is what I would imagine that I was tasting. So let's look at some more pictures and see what we imagine with our senses. Here we have a city. You can see the tall buildings. We know it's a city because this is what it looks like when you go into a big city where people work. Some of them are high-rise apartments, but we don't see those very many around here in Richmond County. So we know this is someplace big in the city like Charlotte or Raleigh. And we see that the sun is going down. I want you to notice that whenever the sun is going down, that the sky is bluer at the top and lighter at the bottom. So remember that when we're going to be drawing and coloring our pictures, remember that the sky is darker at the top than it is at the bottom. So in this picture, let's imagine that we see the tall buildings in the city, the skyscrapers. We smell the fumes from the cars that are driving on the highway. We feel the heat from the pavement that comes up and makes it extra hot. As if it's not already hot enough. You know how hot pavement is when the sun has beat down on it for a long time. And our taste, we can smell the gas, and almost imagine that we could taste the gas because the smell of the gas fumes coming from the cars is so strong. We hear the traffic. We hear car horns. We hear sirens of emergency vehicles, and we imagine where they're going. Are they going to, is somebody in trouble and they're going to be arrested, or is that the rescue squad is going to pick up somebody that's already been injured? These are some of the things that we might imagine if we were in this scene. Now, this is an entirely different scene. This is more of a quiet scene, isn't it? And this is a picture we see of the moon setting or rising. So it actually does rise, I'm sorry. It does rise, and sometimes it starts out really low, but by the end of the night, it ends up higher in the sky. And when it's down low towards the ground, it's actually larger. And as it gets higher in the sky, it means it's getting further away from us, and it becomes smaller and smaller. So this one is where the moon is actually coming up and getting in its position further straight up in the sky. And we can see that it's bright here and it's larger in this picture. We see the deer, and that actually is a buck because we can tell by the horns. And we see an eagle flying overhead. So this is a place out in nature. This is definitely not the city. This is not our neighborhood. This is way out in the wilderness or out someplace in the country. And it looks like maybe a place in cold weather. We smell the pine sap in those pine trees. You know, pine trees have a different smell from other trees, and sometimes we call them fir trees. You know how your Christmas tree smells? It has a definite smell that we always remember throughout our life. We remember what a Christmas tree smells like, and when we smell one, it makes us think of Christmas. We feel, I would imagine that I might be standing and feeling ants, because the ants, I'm standing in an ant bed, and they might be biting my feet. I might be tasting dirt, because maybe the air is, maybe I'm standing on dirt and the air is, or the wind might be blowing and I might have sand in my mouth. But have you ever felt like you could taste the dirt? It's kind of gritty in your mouth. I hear a limb break in the distance, and I hear the crackling of the leaves and the rustling of the leaves as something is walking in the woods. Here we see the deer, but if the deer is perfectly still, we hear the rustling of the leaves and we wonder what's actually walking around in the woods. Here we have a picture that looks more like something we might see in our own backyard. We see a cat, and we see the bird flying overhead, and I believe there's a bird perched on a branch in that tree. I smell honeysuckles. You ever smelled any of those? It's a little flower that smells so sweet. It's got an awesome aroma. That's what I feel like I smell. I feel mosquitoes biting me on my arms and my legs. They're such a nuisance in the summertime. I taste a gnat that just flew in my mouth. Has that ever happened to you? They're also a nuisance. And they fly all around, and for some reason they like to get in our mouths and in our nose. I hear crickets chirping. Do you hear them? Here, I see a neighborhood. This looks like something we might see if we looked outside. These are buildings that we could actually live in. And this apparently is a place in like maybe South Carolina, where the palm tree is part of their state flag. Maybe a tropical area. But we see the limbs of a palm tree sticking up. We have a crescent moon, which means that that we don't see all of them. It's not perfectly round. It's a crescent moon. And we see a few stars in the sky. We smell cooking. Someone is frying chicken. And it smells all over the neighborhood. And it smells so good that I actually feel like I can taste it. And it makes my mouth water. It makes me so hungry. I feel the wind blowing my hair and blowing on my skin and blowing my clothes. And I hear dogs barking in the distance. You ever noticed how one dog barks and then another barks and another? And it's almost as if they're talking to each other from great distances, having a little conversation, and we don't know what they're saying. And we always wonder what they're barking for. Do they see something, an animal, or do they see somebody prowling around, or a stranger has come close to their house and they're guarding their house? I always wonder why dogs are barking in the middle of the night. Now, this is another different place. This looks like it's a tropical island. It looks like definitely at the beach or on the water. I'm not sure if we ourselves that are in this, imagining that we're in this picture, I'm not sure whether we're on land or if we're also in the water. This nighttime scene is a little bit brighter because the sun or the moon is so bright. The moon is so big and bright that it lights up more, and it's not as dark blue in the sky. Excuse me. And we see the island with the 3 palm trees, and we see a boat in the distance, and the big moon and the stars, and we smell salt. This is salt water. And you know, if you've ever been to the beach or near the beach or the water, salt is very dominant in the air. You smell it. You can feel it sticky on your arms and on your skin. You taste the salt. It actually is in your mouth. The wind blows it, and you actually have salt. It's a salty taste in your mouth. In this scene, you would hear the water rippling. And you maybe hear the men that are sitting in the boat, and might hear them talking way off in the distance, and you can't quite make out exactly what they're saying, but you can hear them. In this scene, you are in the desert, and you see maybe you see the cactus. Or if there's one cactus and the cacti you see on the horizon. Here we see that the pink indicates that the sun is just setting or is just rising, but we know that it's night because it's dark. We have the silhouette that we see when it starts to get dark. We smell a reptile. We might smell a lizard, or we might smell a snake. But if you've ever been around reptiles, they definitely have a distinct smell that is different from any other creature. We feel the hot heat because in the desert it's very, very hot. We feel the heat all around us. We taste sand. It's a sandy area where cactus grow. So it's very sandy, and we taste the sand and grit in our mouths. And we hear a rattlesnake shaking his tail and shaking his rattles. And we hear it near us, and it causes our heart to beat, and we panic because we're afraid that it's too near and might strike us. In this scene, I want you to sit and look at it for just a minute. You have to use your imagination, because all we have here is land and tree and a moon. You have to imagine the rest of it. You have to imagine what else might be around you that you can't actually see. You have to listen and see what you might hear. And you have to try to identify what you might taste in your mouth. You have to identify what you feel. You can't see it. What is it that you're feeling? What is it that you smell? And as it gets darker, sometimes you can barely see it all. You have to use your imagination for these things. Now, these are the pictures that I got for you to look at, things for you to think about. And now we're going to draw your picture. So go to the next video and for your demonstration.